Spring weather with birds flying across the sky and flowers in full bloom. The small town of Nguyen wakes up to the sound of water flowing under a small bridge. On the stone-paved road by the river, a farmer carries a shoulder pole from the mountains, hurrying to the east of the town to set up a market stall. By the riverbank, groups of women gather to do laundry, chatting about household matters as they beat their clothes with wooden mallets, producing a rhythmic bang-bang sound. On the opposite side of the river, in an old house facing the stone-paved road, a slender young girl is busy cleaning inside the house. The old house is a typical Jiangnan riverside architecture with white walls and tiled roofs. In front is a shop adjacent to the main road, and passing through a small courtyard, there is a two-story living area. From before dawn, Tum Yu has been cleaning. By noon, when the sun is high overhead, she has only managed to clean 2 rooms and a small kitchen. In the backyard, dry leaves and old tools are piled up, making the already small space feel cramped. Standing under the eaves, Tum Yu observes for a while, unable to bear the scorching sun on her head, and decides to go back inside. She plans to continue cleaning when the sun goes down and the temperature drops in the afternoon. Tum Yu heads to the kitchen, opens the refrigerator, grabs a bottle of Coca-Cola, and then goes to the trendy pink sofa she recently bought, lazily browsing her social media. After scrolling through about 20 pages without seeing the person she's waiting for, Tum Yu sighs, looking dejected, and tosses her phone aside. It turns out she was just imagining things. The person probably doesn't even remember her name, so how could they care about where she goes? Even if she moved to the desert, they wouldn't know or react. Thinking of this, Tum Yu feels downcast. She puts down her phone, swiftly opens the bottle of Coca-Cola, and the cold liquid flows down her throat, cooling her entire body and dispelling the frustration and unease that had started to build up in her heart. Tum Yu is also quite forgetful. After drinking the Coca-Cola, her mood improves, and she picks up her phone again to order food delivery, only to be frustrated to find that there are only 3 restaurants around here. Having grown up in Mado and later studying in the capital, Tum Yu finds it hard to adapt to living in a small, rustic town after spending her life in big cities. She reviews the 3 food delivery options again and finally chooses a place called Ko Dong Tree. The delivery guy arrives quickly. When Tum Yu, wearing slippers, goes to the front door of the shop to get the food, the young delivery guy looks at her in surprise. "Miss, you look unfamiliar. Did you buy this incense shop? Where did Mr. Lee, the former owner, go? I haven't seen him for a few months." "I'm his granddaughter. My grandfather passed away 3 months ago, and I'm here to take over the shop," Tum Yu explains briefly. The delivery guy looks surprised, seemingly unable to believe it. "Mr. Lee was in good health. How did he pass away suddenly? Will your shop still sell incense?" Not wanting to discuss her grandfather further, Tum Yu shakes her head and says, "I'm planning to open a flower shop." Hearing this, the delivery guy looks disappointed. Mr. Lee's incense shop was the only one here. Now that it's closed, people have to go far to the next village to buy incense. What a pity. After sending off the enthusiastic delivery guy, Tum Yu closes the shop door, walks through the backyard back to her living area, and opens her laptop to watch an American movie she likes while eating. At this moment, a new WeChat message pops up. Tum Yu glances at it. It's from her good friend Vung Nya, with several exclamation marks. Tum Yu puts down her chopsticks and responds with a string of punctuation marks. The next second, her phone rings, showing Vung Nya's name on the screen. After finishing her soup, Tum Yu leisurely answers the call, and Vung Nya's commanding voice immediately comes through the microphone. "Tum Yu, can't you have some backbone? Just because of a guy you've met twice, you gave up your overseas study opportunity at the medical university to go to the countryside and farm? Have you lost your mind?" Tum Yu corrects her seriously. "Given my lack of farming skills, it's better I don't ruin the crops. And besides, this has nothing to do with Dubitch. I gave up studying abroad to inherit my grandfather's shop. Now I'm living in a small town called Nguyen. It's very beautiful here. You should visit sometime. It still retains the charm of the riverside region." Vungte Nya knows Tum Nhu Nhu's grandfather. He passed away 3 months ago from a severe illness, and Vungte Nya, being a good friend, attended the funeral. Hearing this, she feels a bit foolish for not understanding the situation. What kind of shop is worth giving up your future for? Didn't your parents object? Tum Nhu Nhu chuckles softly. It was my grandfather's last wish. They didn't object. Besides, they'd love for my brother and me to move far away so they can enjoy their world alone. Tum Nhu Nhu's family situation is somewhat complicated. Her parents' marriage was not approved by her grandfather due to their different social statuses. Her mother was a rich girl and her father was a poor young man. In anger, the young couple eloped. That elopement lasted over 10 years. Thum's father, a quick thinker, ventured into business in mahjong in his youth, making his first pot of gold. Now he's a millionaire. He fell in love with Tum's mother at first sight, and the couple had 2 children, Tum Tun Tun and Tum Nhu Nhu, living affectionately for many years without any disputes. It wasn't until 7 years ago that Tum's parents, having gained enough courage, brought their 2 children back to their hometown to meet the grandfather. By that time, it was a done deal, and although the grandfather was initially angry, he couldn't do anything. He didn't treat his daughter and son-in-law well, but he adored his grandchildren, often taking them to the countryside to play. Grandpa has always run this small incense shop in Moyuan, refusing to move to the big city with his daughter and son-in-law. The only time he went to mahjong was because of a serious illness. Before he passed away, he lay on the hospital bed, held Tum Nhu Nhu's hand, placed a rusty brass key in her palm, and told his daughter and son-in-law, "The incense shop will be left to Nhu Nhu. She has a special connection with it." These were his last words, and after saying them, he passed away. Mr. Thum and Mrs. Thum took these words to heart and transferred the shop to Nhu Nhu, planning to let her decide whether to lease or sell it. However, Nhu Nhu couldn't forget his words, especially the part about her having a special connection. Nhu Nhu had a small secret that even her best friend, Vungte Nya, didn't know. She had a natural affinity for plants. No matter what kind of plant it was, as long as it was in her care, it would thrive even with minimal attention. Regardless of whether Grandpa's words were intentional or not, Nhu Nhu decided to pack her belongings and move to Moyuan. As the sun set and the backyard became cooler, Nhu Nhu rolled up her sleeves and started organizing. She cleared out all the old tools and gave them to Mr. Hua, who was thrilled and even helped her clean up. "Child," Mr. Hua exclaimed, pulling out a statue from beneath a broken table. "What is this?" The statue, covered in dust and grime, was revealed to be a portrait statue. It depicted a man with tousled hair, wearing golden armor, standing on a 5-colored cloud, riding a sword with eyes like lightning. Though the statue was small, only the height of an arm, it couldn't hide the imposing aura of the figure. Mr. Hua looked closely and gasped in astonishment. "This is a statue of the infinite patriarch. You can't just throw this away. Child, you must take it back and offer it in worship." Nhu Nhu was bewildered. As a medical student, she had never been involved with temples or altars. Although Mr. Tum sometimes invited a feng shui master to examine their home's feng shui, they had never worshipped any statues. She had no idea who to worship with this statue. However, understanding the principle of "when in Rome, do as the Romans do," and seeing how seriously Mr. Hua regarded it, she placed the statue of the infinite patriarch in a room as he suggested. As Mr. Hua left with the items, he reminded her, "Remember to apologize to the patriarch." Nhu Nhu agreed. Sure, don't worry." After seeing Mr. Hua off, Nhu Nhu swept the dry leaves into a pile, threw them into the trash can, and after a busy day of cleaning, the backyard looked much better. Nhu Nhu patted her hands and went back to her room. She set up the newly arrived wooden shelf and arranged several potted plants under the eaves to protect them from rain and wind. She fetched half a bucket of water from the well and watered the plants. After being watered, the previously wilted plants immediately revived, looking much fresher and greener. Nhu Nhu searched the house for a suitable place to worship the statue and finally found a small room on the 2nd floor with an altar and incense burner. The altar still had offerings like fruit and bread, but they had long since spoiled. Behind the altar was a shrine, empty. Nu placed the statue of the infinite patriarch inside, fitting perfectly. It seemed Grandpa had worshipped the infinite patriarch here, but somehow the statue ended up downstairs. Without Mr. Hua's reminder, she would have thrown it away as trash. Nu, encountering such a superstitious item for the first time, was curious. She circled the altar, examining the room. The room hadn't been cleaned in a long time and was dusty. Just a few steps kicked up dust clouds, making Nu cough and rush outside, covering her nose and mouth. She decided to clean the second floor the next day and apologized to the infinite patriarch after. It had been in a dusty corner for over 3 months. Another night wouldn't hurt. For dinner, Nu ordered another meal box. After eating, she set up a lounge chair in the yard to watch American TV shows. Just as she finished an episode, it started raining, drenching her. Nu hurriedly grabbed her tablet and ran under the eaves, leaving the lounge chair behind. Her wet hair clung to her face as she grumpily went inside to grab a towel, then took an umbrella to retrieve the lounge chair. Staring at the door, she saw the rain getting heavier, showing no signs of stopping, so she went inside to shower and change, then lay on her bed, browsing social media. Perhaps exhausted from cleaning or relaxed after the hot shower, she quickly felt sleepy. Her eyelids drooped as she scrolled through her friends' posts, not finding anything from Dubik. Just as she was about to give in to sleep, a new notification popped up from Dubich. He had posted a new status. Nu instantly woke up and clicked to view it. Dubich's latest status. Suddenly turning back, X9. When Nu saw the words "suddenly turning back," her heart sank. Discovering that the 9 pictures were all of a beautiful girl made her feel even worse. She clicked through each photo, carefully analyzing them. The background was familiar, the Forbidden City Museum in the capital. She had visited it several times and taken photos in the same spot. Spending a day off at the museum with just one boy and one girl, taking photos and posting such a status, anyone could tell they were in a relationship. Nu stared blankly for a long time. Surprisingly, the frustration she'd felt for months dissipated instantly, finally vanishing. After completely letting go of her unrequited love, the first thing Nu did was go to sleep. She was really exhausted. After putting her phone under her pillow, she fell asleep and soon began to snore softly. The work and rest schedule in this small town was very different from that of the big city. In the city, nightlife started at 7 or 8 o'clock, but in the ancient town of Moyuan, there was no one on the streets by 7 or 8 o'clock. The rain was washing the brick-paved roads along the river, with sediment, mud, and silt flowing into the river with the rainwater. The heavy rain seemed like a ritual cleansing. The streetlights in front of the shop suddenly flickered, struggled to stay on for a few moments, and then went out completely. Inside the room, Nu woke up with a shiver from a dream. She reached out for her phone and saw that she had only slept for 2 hours. She turned over to continue sleeping, but suddenly she heard a clunk-clunk sound, as if something was slowly rolling on the floor. Nu sat up and listened silently, confirming that the sound was coming from the living room outside. Could she be so unlucky as to have a thief right after moving in? Feeling a bit panicked, she immediately got under the covers and called the police. After explaining the situation, the police advised her to stay in her room with the door locked and not to do anything rash. They would arrive shortly. After hanging up, Nu quietly got up, took out a pepper spray from her bag, and carefully hid behind the door, waiting. Outside, everything was silent. The clunking sound had disappeared. Nu held her breath and listened for over 10 minutes without any further noises. She started to doubt if she had imagined it. She put her hand on the door lock, ready to go out and check, but then the sound came again. Clunk, clunk. Nu quickly withdrew her hand and pressed herself against the wall, not daring to move. In such a situation, every minute felt like a year. 20 minutes later, the police finally broke down the front door and rushed in. "Miss, is anything missing?" The police searched the house but found no trace of a thief. Nu looked around the living room, which only had some simple decorations. The kitchen was still empty as the new appliances she ordered hadn't been delivered yet. She glanced around the living room and answered, "Nothing is missing." The police said, You might have heard wrong. There hasn't been a theft in Mo Yuan for over 20 years. The locals are honest and the public security is very good. Nunu was certain she hadn't misheard, but nothing was missing from the house. Before leaving, the police advised, the front door lock was damaged when we broke in. If you're scared, you can block it with a cabinet or something. Tomorrow, I'll contact a locksmith to replace the lock for you. After the police left, Nunu pushed a wooden cabinet from the shop to block the door, then walked through the backyard back to her room. She heard the strange clunk sound again. Certain there was no thief, her courage grew. She searched the living room and finally found the culprit behind a flower pot. It was the statue of the infinite patriarch lying quietly behind the flower pot. The patriarch's statue looked majestic, with tiger-like eyes that conveyed authority. Nunu was stunned. This was the statue she had placed in the shrine earlier, wasn't it? She felt something eerie. She was the only one in the house. How did the statue of the patriarch end up downstairs? Could there really be gods in this world? With a sense of reverence, Nunu returned the statue to the small room on the second floor. The shrine was indeed empty. She placed the statue back in the shrine and observed it for a while, but couldn't figure out anything. She wasn't afraid. The saying goes that if you don't do anything against your conscience, you won't fear ghosts knocking at your door. She just wanted to know why the statue had appeared on the first floor. After taking a few steps, she was once again choked by the dust. Covering her nose and mouth, a thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that the room was too dirty and the patriarch didn't want to stay there? Thinking of this, Nunu immediately went downstairs to get cleaning supplies and a bucket of water to clean the room. She planned to clean the second floor eventually, so she might as well do it now. She had only slept for 2 hours and felt quite refreshed. It took her over an hour to clean the room thoroughly. Then she went to the front of the shop to get some leftover incense and candles to offer to the patriarch. After finishing everything, it was late at night. Exhausted, Nunu finally went back to her room to rest. This time, there were no strange sounds, and she slept soundly until morning. Nunu got up, washed, and changed clothes before going out to buy breakfast. Passing by the fruit store in the supermarket, she suddenly remembered the rotten offerings she had cleaned up the night before. On a whim, Nunu bought 3 bags of fruits and a large bag of snacks and candies, brought them home and placed them on the altar, offering them to the statue of the infinite patriarch. Patriarch, please enjoy these and protect me. The Mo Yuan police were efficient. By noon, a locksmith arrived to replace the lock with a new one, free of charge. In the afternoon, the kitchen appliances and some household items she had ordered online were delivered. Nu arranged everything properly, then stored her grandfather's items like candles, gold paper, cinnabar, and other odds and ends in a chest in the back storage. She then called an interior decoration team to refurbish the shop. Next, she went to the business registration office to get a business license. After handling all the chores over the next 2 weeks, a new flower shop named Kinhua Duin opened on Hisi Road in Mo Yuan town. After deciding to take over her grandfather's shop, Nunu had done market research and found out that flowers from Kunming had the most variety and the best quality. Before moving to Mo Yuan, she had made a trip to Kunming. After conducting an on-site survey, she decided to choose a medium-sized flower supplier and signed a supply contract. Now that the shop was well decorated, the flowers were immediately delivered, filling the shop with a vibrant array of colors and shapes. Inside the shop, Tum-Nyu personally watered each potted plant, and each one, without exception, became instantly vibrant and beautiful after being watered. Her neighbor, Aunt Fan, brought over a basket of red eggs and said, "Nunu, I wish you prosperous business." When Tum-Nyu was a child visiting her grandfather, the neighbors already knew her, so when they saw her new shop opening, they eagerly brought red eggs. This was a local custom, wishing the shop owner prosperous business by giving a basket of red eggs. Nunu accepted the red eggs with a smile and thanked her. She noticed that Aunt Fan was holding a bag in her other hand and knew she was going to play mahjong. So she handed her a small potted lucky bamboo, saying, "Aunt Fan, this lucky bamboo is for you, to bring good fortune." People who liked gambling tended to be a bit superstitious. Hearing what Nunu said, Aunt Fan was immediately pleased and didn't hesitate to take the lucky bamboo home. The people in the small town were warm and simple. On the first day of opening, Nunu received a total of 17 baskets of red eggs, and she gave away 17 pots of flowers in return. By 7 p.m., Nunu closed the shop. After subtracting the flowers she had given away, she had sold 23 pots of flowers and 3 bouquets. On average, each pot of flowers earned 45 yuan, and each bouquet 80 yuan, making a profit of over 1,000 yuan. This was much better than she had initially expected. What surprised her even more was that in the following half-month, Qinhua Duan's business thrived, with daily profits of at least 2,000 yuan, sometimes reaching 3,000 yuan. Considering that the cost of living in Moyuan was low, where a rich breakfast cost only 3 yuan, an income of 3,000 yuan allowed for a comfortable life. Nunu found life in the small town very comfortable. Each day, she happily tended to her plants, even starting to learn how to make sweets and practice yoga. During this time, Vung Tenya called her several times to ask if she wanted to continue her specialized training, but she declined. Nunu wasn't very ambitious. Her current peaceful days were too enjoyable to give up. After the end of spring, Moyuan entered the rainy season. Today, Nunu sat in her shop watching American TV shows. Outside, the drizzle continued, and on the empty streets, people holding umbrellas walked slowly past her shop, occasionally stopping to admire the flowers and take shelter from the rain. This was the charm of Moyuan town. Life moved at a slow pace, and you rarely saw people rushing, no matter what was happening. At this moment, a well-dressed woman walked up and stopped in front of the shop window. The woman called out to Nunu and asked, "Miss Tum, is today's bouquet ready?" Nunu paused the video, stood up, and handed the woman a fresh bouquet of yellow tulips. "It's ready. Today I chose yellow tulips for you, Aunt Chu." The bright yellow tulip buds nestled shyly in the bouquet. Aunt Chu accepted the bouquet with a smile and praised, "The young master loves your flowers. The first thing he asks every morning is whether I've bought flowers. It's the first time I've seen him like something so much." Aunt Chu was a nanny for a family in town. The young master she mentioned was the owner of that house. Since moving to Moyuan, Nunu had heard many stories about that family. It was said that the family's surname was Tu, and they were very prosperous. Most of them had emigrated abroad long ago, and those who stayed had moved to the big city. Only this young master, who had been frail since childhood and born abroad, returned to Moyuan alone 3 years ago and had stayed ever since. People were curious about this young master, but gradually lost interest as he never showed himself. Occasionally, he became a topic of conversation after meals. Apart from movies and stories, Nunu had never encountered such an old-fashioned title as Young Master in real life. Combined with the ancient architecture of Moyuan, it sometimes made her feel unsure about which era she was living in. Nunu shook her head slightly and said, "Aunt Chu, if Mr. Tu likes the flowers so much, why don't you sign up for a monthly or yearly subscription? I can deliver flowers to your door every morning, saving you the trouble of running back and forth." Hearing that, Aunt Chu was delighted and immediately paid for the service. "Oh, that's a great idea. It'll save me a lot of hassle. Miss Tum, thank you so much." Nunu replied, "It's no trouble at all. I should be thanking you for supporting my business." After Aunt Chu left with the tulips, Nunu returned to her rattan chair to continue watching her show, munching on dried and candied fruit from a snack bag. The day passed quickly, and by 5:30 p.m., Nunu closed the shop and went home to prepare dinner. Cooking for one, she made whatever she felt like eating. Tonight, it was stir-fried noodles with bacon. Nunu sat in the living room with her bowl, watching her phone screen, which displayed the elegant face of Vung Tenya. "Looks like you're enjoying life there. Your cheeks are looking rounder." Vung Tenya's expression was complex as she sighed. "All right, I won't try to convince you anymore, as long as you're happy." Seeing her friend's tired face, Nunu asked, "What's wrong? Is your internship not going well?" Vung Tenya, a student of anesthesiology, was currently interning at a hospital under the guidance of a professor from medical university. The internship was essentially an assistant job, involving a lot of logistical work, very busy and lacking in professional substance, leaving her with no free time. Vung Te Nya angrily mumbled a few words and suddenly said, "I suddenly feel a bit envious of you. How leisurely you are. I've been exhausted for a month and only earned 2,000, and now I have to work overtime." Thum Nhu Nhu laughed. "Your job has a lot of potential. Don't just look at the present. Each person has their own path, and you wouldn't be suitable living like me." Vung Te Nya was just speaking casually and then looked at the time, saying, "I have to get back to my shift now. Let's talk more when I have free time." Thum Nhu Nhu agreed, ended the video call, and continued watching a movie while eating noodles. Her cooking skills had improved a lot, and the noodles today were really delicious. After eating, Thum Nhu Nhu walked around the yard to digest her food, listening to the sounds of children playing noisily in the neighbor's yard, which felt particularly peaceful. After digesting, she slowly went to take a bath, lit some scented candles, and did yoga. After finishing a yoga session, it was just 9:30 p.m., time to prepare for bed. Thum Nhu Nhu washed her face, applied skincare, and got into her cozy bed. Late at night, the backyard was covered in thick fog that enveloped the whole house, making it impossible to see one's own hand in front of them. Thum Nhu Nhu suddenly felt thirsty, so she went to the living room to get a cup of water, remembering the kettle was on the coffee table in the living room. When she reached the living room, she flipped the switch on the wall, but the light flickered and then went out. "What's going on? Is there an electrical problem?" Thum Nhu Nhu muttered, pouring herself a glass of water. At that moment, there was a thump, thump, thump sound from the staircase next to the living room, as if something was jumping down the stairs. Thum Nhu Nhu suddenly stopped her drinking motion, stiffly looking towards the stairs. She saw a statue of Volung Tosu jumping step by step down the stairs. When it reached the living room on the first floor, it stopped moving. In the darkness, Thum Nhu Nhu clearly felt her heart pounding violently. She hesitated and took a step back, intending to retreat to her bedroom. Just as she was about to lift her foot, a white mist suddenly emerged from the statue, spreading around with a melody playing, and a tall figure emerged from the statue. Thum Nhu Nhu was stunned, standing there in shock as she watched Volung Tosu come to life. She had looked up on Baidu that Volung Tosu was actually the great Emperor Huyen Vu, a famous god of the north in Chinese mythology. According to legend, Emperor Huyen Vu was a water god who controlled rain and wind. Not only that, but he was also the god of longevity, and worshipping him could increase one's lifespan. The famous Wudang Mountain worships Emperor Huyen Vu. A powerful god like that surely wouldn't harm people, right? Thum Nhu Nhu, Volung Tosu spoke, his voice echoing in the small living room. "You possess spiritual energy and have a fate with my Tao sect. How can you spend your days idly without any ambition?" Thum Nhu Nhu was trembling with fear. Even Volung Tosu was here to criticize her lack of ambition. Was it against heaven's principles to want to live a leisurely life? Gathering her courage, she said, "I think this way is quite good." Volung Tosu snorted. This place used to be a prosperous incense shop with a devoted owner who offered continuous incense daily. Now that you are here, the incense offerings have greatly decreased. Thum Nhu Nhu instantly understood his implied criticism for not offering incense regularly. So she quickly said, "It's my oversight. Don't worry, from now on, I'll burn incense for you 3 times a day and change the offerings daily." Volung Tosu paused, his previously stern gaze softening, and nodded. Young people can be nurtured. Phew! Thum Nhu Nhu was about to breathe a sigh of relief when she heard him continue. "Since you are so sincere, I will not treat you unfairly. Take this Huyen Tian Chu and study it carefully. You will achieve great things." A book appeared in front of Thum Nhu Nhu. She looked at the glowing figure of the god and then at the book before her, politely declining. "Thank you, but I'm not really interested in these things. Please just bless my business to prosper." Volung Tosu frowned, displeased. "Are you looking down on the heritage of my Huyen Va sect? How could she dare?" She quickly shook her head. No, I just don't have much interest in metaphysics. You possess spiritual energy and are already half a member of the Huyen Mon. Bagdat spent his entire life without being able to enter the sect. Now this place is entrusted to you, hoping you will accept this heritage, Volung Tosu said slowly. Bakdat was her grandfather's name. Thum Nhu realized the significance of her grandfather's words before he passed, saying she had a fate with this shop. So, the true connection wasn't with the shop, but with the deity enshrined within. Possessing spiritual energy, heritage, Huyen Mon. For the first time, Thum Nhu encountered these mystical concepts and felt a bit bewildered. She hesitated, realizing how comfortable life in Motwin town was and not wanting to leave. Moreover, the shop was her grandfather's legacy. Passing it on to someone else felt wrong. Accepting this heritage seemed like just learning some mystical knowledge, which wouldn't change much. Thinking of this, Thum Nhu reached out and took the book floating in the air. Tosuja, I will study diligently. Volung Tosu nodded in satisfaction. Young people can be nurtured. May you spread the glory of my Huyen Tian lineage and recruit disciples widely. Take this miscellaneous notes as well for your initiation. Another book fell to the ground, and then Volung Tosu's figure disappeared, leaving behind only a motionless statue. Thum Nhu picked up the books, moved the statue to the second floor, and went back to sleep. The early morning sunlight streamed through the glass window, pouring onto the wooden floor of the bedroom. On the windowsill, 4 or 5 small birds gathered, pecking at the green leaves in a flower pot. Their melodious chirping was pleasant to the ear. Thum Nhu was awakened by the birds, drowsily poking her head out from under the blanket. She glanced at the Huyen Tian Chu and Tap Ki books on her bedside table. She was startled, and her drowsiness instantly vanished. Last night wasn't a dream. She had accepted the heritage of Volung Tosu and become a member of the Huyen Mon. Thum Nhu sat up, grabbed a cushion to support her back, and picked up the Huyen Tian Chu to flip through it. The material of the book was quite unique, different from regular paper, feeling more like leather to the touch. Seeing the first page, Thum Nhu's mouth dropped open a bit. The content of the book was written in traditional Chinese characters, and not the commonly used ones. Reading it was laborious, as nearly half of the characters in a line were unfamiliar to her. She reluctantly read a bit, guessing as she went along. The spell recorded on the first page was called Huyen Hi Chu, which seemed to be an offensive charm. The drawing was a bit complex. Thum Nhu studied it for a while, then tried to follow the strokes of the Huyen Hi Chu. Strangely, no matter how she drew it, the charm always turned out messy and she couldn't complete it correctly. Thinking about it, Thum Nhu put down the Huyen Tian Chu and picked up the Tap Ki. The content of the Tap Ki, though also in traditional Chinese characters, had fewer unfamiliar ones and looked simpler to understand. The first page recorded a wealth summoning charm, the second page a sleep charm, and the third page a purification charm. Flipping through several pages, Thum Nhu found that the Tap Ki contained various charms that could bring convenience to daily life. Quite interesting. After reading for a while, Thum Nhu got up, washed her face, changed clothes, and then went to the meditation room on the second floor to offer incense to Volung Tosu, replacing the offerings with fresh ones. She then went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Waking up early today, with more than 2 hours until Kinhua Duin opened, Thum Nhu decided to make a hearty breakfast to treat herself. Let's say it's a celebration for becoming a disciple of the Huyen Mon. She carried a small bucket to fetch water from the courtyard well. Compared to tap water, she felt the well water at her home tasted better, lacking the disinfectant smell and being sweet and fresh. Previously, when she and her brother visited their grandfather here, he would soak fruits in the well during hot weather before giving them to the siblings. The fruits were delicious and fresh. After fetching the water and closing the well lid, Thum Nhu returned to the kitchen. She opened the small fridge to check the remaining ingredients and decided to make fried dumplings with eggs, sliced fruit, and a bowl of red date porridge. As she was about to start cooking, she glanced at the bucket of water and suddenly remembered the purification charm she had just read about in the Tap Ki. Why not try it out? Purifying the water before cooking might make the food taste even better. Being an action-oriented person, Thum Nhu immediately went to the storage cupboard to find yellow paper and cinnabar. Her grandfather's incense and candle shop had left plenty of supplies, which she could use. With the materials ready, Tum Yu Nyu opened the page with the purification charm, held her breath, and began drawing according to the diagram. The charm was very simple to draw, with a few wavy lines and small circles, looking like a child's doodle. While chanting the spell, she drew the charm. Initially, her strokes felt sluggish, but as she became more proficient with the incantation and drawing, the sluggishness disappeared. After wasting 3 sheets of yellow paper, she finally succeeded in creating a purification charm. Coming out of the mystical state, Tum Yu Nyu felt a bit disoriented. She closed her eyes to calm down, then threw the purification charm into the bucket of water. The charm dissolved upon contact with water, disappearing instantly. Tum Yu Nyu examined the bucket closely but noticed no visible changes. She took a cup, scooped some water, and took a sip. The water tasted sweeter and cooler, refreshing her entire body. Tum Yu Nyu was full of admiration. This charm was truly wonderful. The well water tasted even better than before. Elated, she used the purified water to prepare breakfast. The food indeed tasted much better, proving that good water makes good food. Satisfied, she took the tap key to the front store, planning to pass the time with the book today. After watering all the plants in the store, Tum Yu Nyu remembered she needed to deliver fresh flowers to the Tu family. Based on the types of flowers Auntie Cho usually chose, Tum Yu Nyu felt that young Master Tu preferred pale-colored flowers. So she cut a few white lilies and yellow roses, added some pale-colored baby's breath, wrapped them carefully, and took an umbrella to go out. Though it wasn't raining, the weather in a place like Mongguin town was as fickle as a woman's mood, changing without reason. So, even on a sunny day, it was best to carry an umbrella. Even if it didn't rain, it could be used to shield from the sun. Carrying the bouquet, she crossed a small bridge. After descending the bridge and following the stone-paved path east for about 8 minutes, she saw an old house that felt quite historic. Though old, the house looked well-maintained, with signs of repairs. 2 stone lions flanked the large gate, and a bagua mirror hung over the doorway. Seeing the bagua mirror, Tum Yu Nyu thought of Volung Tosu. The people in this small town were indeed superstitious. Such items were rarely seen in big cities like Mado or the capital. If not for Volung Tosu manifesting, she would still be a staunch atheist. Through the bagua mirror, she saw her reflection, slightly distorted in the golden mirror. Shifting her gaze, she stood before the courtyard gate and pressed the doorbell. After a while, the large door opened, revealing a young man with features as beautiful as a painting standing behind it. The young man wore a white mandarin collar shirt, tall and slender, with a face as pale as parchment, exuding the delicate and scholarly aura of a noble young master from the past. Tum Yu Nyu guessed that this must be the rumored young master too. She handed him the fresh flowers, smiling. "Hello, these are the fresh flowers Auntie Chow ordered from the shop. Please accept them." The young man's gaze lingered on the flowers for a moment, then he reached out to take them, nodding his thanks. "Thank you for the trouble." Tum Yu Nyu noticed that although his complexion was pale and haggard, his eyes were bright, especially when he looked at her, as if seeing something strange. His pupils dilated slightly. Tum Yu Nyu looked down at her clothes. "Mr. Tu, is there something wrong?" Tu Dun Cho replied, "Did you grow these flowers?" Tum Yu Nyu nodded. "Yes, they're all freshly cut, don't worry." "Thank you, they're very beautiful," Tu Dun Cho said softly, then closed the door. As the footsteps inside faded away, Tum Yu Nyu glanced at the bagua mirror hanging above the door, feeling that she might have seen a shadow flash by in the mirror. In the bronze mirror, there was only her own distorted face. Maybe it was an illusion. After delivering the flowers, Tum Yu Nyu slowly walked back with her umbrella. As she passed Aunt Zhang's stall, she stopped to buy 3 crucian carp. It had been a long time since she had crucian carp soup, so she planned to cook a pot of crucian carp tofu soup for lunch. Back at the shop, she put the crucian carp in the fridge, then opened the store for business. During working hours, there weren't many people on the street, and the shop was quite leisurely. Tum Yu Nyu changed into a pair of comfortable slippers, sat by the window, holding a brush in one hand and pressing paper with the other, slowly drawing according to the illustrations in the miscellaneous notes. After the purification charm, she started learning the wealth summoning charm. The strokes of the wealth summoning charm were a bit more complex. It took her half a day to successfully draw one. She folded the charm into a triangle shape and tucked it into the narrow gap under the window. Throughout the day, Tum Yu Nyu drew a total of 3 wealth summoning charms and 2 purification charms. By 5 p.m., the sun had not yet set, but light drizzle had started outside. Tum Yu Nyu figured there wouldn't be any more business today and decided to finish drawing the last purification charm before closing up for the day. Aunt Fan, the neighbor, walked by with a small bag. When she passed the window of Qinghua Duin, she peeked inside and immediately stopped, craning her neck to ask, "Nyu Nyu, what are you doing?" At that moment, Thumb Nyu Nyu had just put down the final stroke of her brush, completing the purification charm. She lifted the brush in her hand and smiled. "Drawing charms, nothing to do, so I'm learning this for fun." "You young folks like these things too?" Aunt Fan was surprised. "What charms do you know how to draw?" Thumb Nyu Nyu replied, "Wealth summoning charm and purification charm." Aunt Fan laughed. "Wealth summoning charm? Give me one. I'm about to go play mahjong. A charm for good luck might come in handy." She took out 20 yuan and placed it on the windowsill. Thumb Nyu Nyu's grandfather used to sell charms for this price. Thumb Nyu Nyu quickly handed the triangle-folded wealth summoning charm and the 20 yuan back to Aunt Fan, refusing. "Aunt Fan, no need to be polite. This is just something I drew for fun. No charge. Please take it." Since moving to Motongwin town, Aunt Fan had always looked after her, bringing her meat and fish every day. Aunt Fan insisted, tapping the money on the windowsill. "Nyu Nyu, a free charm won't work. Take the money, or I won't take the charm." Thumb Nyu Nyu couldn't help but laugh, knowing that Aunt Fan didn't want her efforts to go unrewarded. She accepted the money with a smile. "Today, you'll definitely win big." "Hehe, definitely. Thank you," Aunt Fan said, tucking the wealth summoning charm into her bag and leaving with a hum. The water quality in Motongwin town was very clean and the fish were extremely fresh. Combined with purified water, the taste was truly exceptional. Thumb Nyu Nyu had 2 bowls of rice with Crucian carp tofu soup, then lay on the sofa with a full stomach, watching a movie. Outside, the rain drizzled gently, and under the eaves, birds chirped noisily. Life like this was wonderful. Whether she had the heritage or not didn't seem to make a big difference to her life. Thumb Nyu Nyu pondered. Fan Hong walked into a mahjong room with her small bag. The door of the mahjong room was old, with yellowed plastic curtains hanging over the rusty iron frame. Behind the curtains, figures moved, and the sound of mahjong tiles clattering was constant. The mahjong room had been open for nearly 10 years, and the regulars all knew each other well. When Fan Hong entered, many players greeted her. Lu Ming stood up and offered his seat. "Just in time. I've been sitting for so long my back is stiff. This seat is yours." Fan Hong sat down, smiling. "All right, how's the game today?" Lu Ming said. "So-so, neither winning nor losing." "Not a lucky spot, huh?" Fan Hong placed her bag on her lap and joined in shuffling the tiles with her fellow players. After setting up, she remembered something and took out a triangular charm from her bag, placing it on the edge of the table, weighted down with some money. Lu Ming, standing nearby, exclaimed, "What's that?" Fan Hong started drawing her tiles. "This is a wealth summoning charm. I came prepared today. Soon, I'll wipe you all out." The fellow players laughed. "Does it work?" "Who cares if it works? It's just for luck," Fan Hong said, arranging her tiles with a bright smile. "Oh, luck's not bad today." Lu Ming leaned in to look, clicking his tongue. "Old Fan, nice start." This round of mahjong lasted less than 5 minutes before it ended, and Fan Hong happily revealed her tiles, showing a perfect hand. "All sequences, I win." The perfect hand startled the players at the other 2 tables, who craned their necks to look. Wow, an all sequences hand, quite lucky. A perfect hand was difficult to achieve, rarely seen unless one was very lucky. Fan Hong beamed as she collected her winnings and shuffled the tiles again. Just lucky, just lucky. The second round began. Several idle onlookers in the mahjong room gathered behind Fan Hong to watch. "Really lucky today. This round looks good too. Old Fan, did you visit a temple for blessing?" The fellow players couldn't sit still any longer, glaring at the onlookers. "Just watch quietly, will you?" Do you know you're disturbing us? This round took a bit longer than the first. Over 10 minutes later, Fan Hong revealed her tiles again. Another perfect hand. Ha ha! Pay up! The entire night, the mahjong room was filled with the sound of Fan Hong winning. Her fellow players changed several times, but she won every game, and not just any wins, they were big wins. There were no less than 5 rounds of perfect hands, just like a gambling god in the movies. Everyone in town knew each other well and understood each other's habits. Fan Hong was famously superstitious. Someone finally couldn't resist asking, "Fan Hong, what's gotten into you today? Did you pray to the god of wealth before coming here?" Fan Hong, who had been winning all evening and whose small bag was now bulging with money, joyfully replied, "Oh, just luck." She packed up her things and stood up, saying, "Time to rest now. The luck here has started to turn. If anyone wants to take over, hurry up." Lu Ming saw her pick up the small triangular charm and put it into her bag. A vague thought crossed his mind and he joked, "Old Fan, where did you get this wealth summoning charm? It really works." As soon as the others heard there was something called a wealth summoning charm, they crowded around, asking questions. In this small town, many people worshipped Buddha and believed in gods and spirits, so they were very receptive to such things. Everyone had seen Fan Hong's performance that night. If they had to choose between pure luck and another reason, they were more willing to believe there was another reason, one they could also benefit from. Fan Hong didn't hide it. This was drawn by the neighbor girl, Bakdat's granddaughter, Tum Nhu Nhu. She's running a flower shop now. Bakdat's incense and candle shop was well known in Mok Nguyen town. Even if people didn't know him personally, they had heard his name. So, when Fan Hong mentioned him, everyone reacted. "I know Bakdat's granddaughter. I met her a few years ago. I heard she was studying medicine in the capital. Why is she running a flower shop now? Is selling flowers more profitable than being a doctor? Her family must be well off. Isn't her father doing well in City S? She probably doesn't lack money and does whatever she likes for fun. Of course, I've seen her flower shop and it's quite nice. She's a talented girl and very beautiful too. I heard she's still single, no boyfriend yet." "Really? I know a great guy who asked me to introduce him. I'll have to arrange something." "She's from a big city. Why would she be interested in a local guy? Don't bother her. She might get annoyed and stop selling you the wealth summoning charms." "Yes, Fan Hong. Next time bring me a wealth summoning charm too." "Me too. I want one as well." Fan Hong agreed to all of them and left the mahjong room with her small bag. The crowd inside continued their discussions, and amidst the clattering of mahjong tiles, Tum Nhu Nhu's name became etched in everyone's minds. Volung Tosu had manifested again. Late at night, Tum Nhu Nhu was sleeping soundly when a familiar clattering sound woke her. She got up, looked out the door, and saw the statue of Volung Tosu sitting upright on the coffee table. "Tosu-ja, is there something you need?" Tum Nhu Nhu respectfully asked. Since she had accepted the Huanmon heritage, Volung Tosu was now like a mentor and senior to her, and she always treated her elders with respect. Volung Tosu was very satisfied with her attitude. "I was right. You are a good seed. The responsibility of spreading the Huanmon heritage will fall on your shoulders." As Volung Tosu spoke, Tum Nhu Nhu inexplicably felt an invisible weight added to her right shoulder. She was slightly stunned but quickly understood. "Is it because the wealth summoning charms worked?" Volung Tosu slowly said, "Indeed, since your grandfather passed away, the believers in Mok Nguyen town had nearly disappeared. But just now I felt the faith energy again." The next morning, the rain that had lasted all night had stopped. The dark clouds had dispersed, and the sun was high in the sky. Tum Nhu Nhu woke up slowly, did a stretching routine in the courtyard, drank a glass of fresh milk, and went to deliver flowers to the two family. Today, it was Auntie Cho who opened the door. She had just returned from grocery shopping, and they met at the gate. "Miss Tum, you're too kind," Auntie Cho said, carrying a woven basket, smiling warmly. "Come in and sit for a while. Have you had breakfast? I made potato and radish cakes and green bean soup. Come in and try some." Tum Nhu Nhu, holding the bouquet, politely declined. "I can't stay long. The shop is unattended. Maybe another time." The two families' house was spacious, with 3 courtyards front and back, more expansive than her own house, and the courtyard was more open. Auntie Cho put the basket into the pond under the eaves and took the bouquet. "Miss Tum, come in and sit. I'll wrap 2 cakes for you to take home. The potato and radish cakes I make are very popular." Thum Nhu Nhu had only had a glass of milk in the morning. Hearing this, she immediately felt hungry. "Then I'll trouble you." "Miss Thum, you're too polite. Life here is very leisurely. The only person in the house is young Master Tu, and there's little housework. I spend a lot of time researching new recipes and often make extra to share with neighbors. It's give and take." Auntie Chow said as she put the flowers in a ceramic vase and went to the kitchen to wrap the cakes. Thum Nhu Nhu sat alone in the living room. The two families' house had excellent orientation, with great attention to light and ventilation. She could feel the refreshing breeze blowing through, carrying the fresh scent of bamboo. The overall style of the two families' home leaned towards traditional Chinese decor. In the center of the living room were mahogany chairs and a tea table, with a carved screen behind the chairs. Through the gaps in the screen, she could see a stretch of green bamboo swaying in the breeze in the courtyard. Auntie Chow hadn't returned yet. Thum Nhu Nhu hesitated for a moment, then walked around the screen and peered into the courtyard. She saw that the ground on either side of the courtyard had been dug up and planted with bamboo. The lush bamboo had attracted many birds that perched on the bamboo, chirping merrily. Amidst the melodious birdsong, the carved wooden window on the second floor of the opposite room opened, and a slender figure appeared, startling the birds. Thum Nhu Nhu looked up and coincidentally met his gaze. "Hello, Mr. Tu. I brought the flowers," Thum Nhu Nhu said with a smile, showing no embarrassment at being caught wandering around someone else's house. This was one of her skills. No matter how awkward the situation, she could always diffuse it with a smile. Tu Dun Cho looked down at her, his dark eyes cold, and his pale, thin face devoid of color. "Thank you." She continued to smile. "It's my job. Would you like to come down and take a look?" Tu Dun Cho responded, "All right." Thum Nhu Nhu was slightly surprised. She had only been polite and didn't expect him to actually agree. His complexion was poor, indicating he hadn't rested well. Was coming downstairs too much effort for him? She suddenly felt a bit guilty. Tu Dun Cho soon appeared in the living room. He was still dressed in traditional style clothing, but today he wore an amber-patterned outfit, looking less gloomy than yesterday. He looked at the freshly arranged flowers and complimented, "They're very beautiful." Thum Nhu Nhu was delighted, smiling, "I'm glad you like them." At this moment, Auntie Cho came out of the kitchen holding a small, delicate thermos, looking surprised to see Tu Dun Cho and Thum Nhu Nhu facing each other. "Young master, breakfast is being warmed in the kitchen. I'll go get it for you." Tu Dun Cho nodded slightly. Auntie Cho handed the thermos to Thum Nhu Nhu. "Miss Thum, sorry for the delay." "Auntie Cho, you're too polite," Thum Nhu Nhu said, taking the thermos, bidding farewell to Tu Dun Cho, and leaving the Tu house. Back at Kinhua Duin, she went to the back room to have breakfast first. Auntie Cho's cooking was truly excellent. The potato and radish cakes and green bean soup were extremely delicious, leaving a lingering taste. After breakfast, she was ready to run the business. She opened all the doors and windows of the shop, sat down at the table by the window, and started practicing drawing charms. She had just settled in when Auntie Fan arrived, carrying a basket with 2 fish flopping inside. "Nhu Nhu, Uncle Lee caught these by the river this morning. They're very fresh, perfect for soup," Auntie Fan said, walking through the shop as if she owned the place. "I'll put them in the tank for you." Thum Nhu Nhu went to check. They were 2 large crucian carp, each the size of 2 or 3 of the ones she bought before. "Thank you, Auntie Fan. These fish are really big," she said, watching the 2 crucian carp happily swim around in the water. Auntie Fan laughed and waved her hand. "No need to thank me. The wealth summoning charm I bought from you yesterday worked wonders. I won 18,000 last night. That amount was roughly 3 months' salary for her husband." Thum Nhu Nhu knew the wealth summoning charm was effective, but she hadn't expected such immediate results. Auntie Fan peeked out the shop door and whispered, "Nhu Nhu, your charms are extraordinary. Selling them for 20 yuan is too cheap. Up in the mountains, at Tam Tink Quan, their charms are very expensive, costing several hundred each, and they limit the quantity." I feel their charms aren't as effective as yours. Don't sell them for 20 yuan anymore. Set a higher price. It's not just about making money. If this low price gets out, you'll ruin other people's business and cause trouble for yourself. Auntie Fan patted her hand earnestly. I'll make up the difference for what I owe. Tum Yu Nyu couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time she'd encountered a customer who thought her prices were too low. But Auntie Fan had a point. Effective and cheap charms could disrupt the market, and other practitioners might take issue with her. She thought for a moment and said, "You're right. This price isn't suitable anymore. What do you suggest is reasonable?" Auntie Fan asked, "How many charms can you make each day?" "At most 10 wealth summoning charms," Tum Yu Nyu said. "I'm still learning and exploring other charms as well, making a bit of each." Auntie Fan nodded and decisively said, "Then make it 800 per charm. It's a lucky number." Tum Yu Nyu agreed. "All right, 800 it is." Though more expensive than regular charms, considering their effectiveness, it was a fair price. Moreover, given the responsibility of spreading the Huanmon heritage entrusted by Volung Tosu, she felt this price was appropriate. So, the price for the wealth summoning charms was set. "I'll take 10 more at this price. My mahjong friends all want one and asked me to get them," Auntie Fan said, pulling out her phone to pay via WeChat. "I'll also make up what I owe." Tum Yu Nyu quickly stopped her. "Forget about what you bought before. From now on, we'll use this price." Auntie Fan insisted, "I can't take advantage of you." After some back and forth, Tum Yu Nyu finally accepted the money and gave Auntie Fan a purification charm as a gift. "This can purify water. Just toss it in the water. Consider it a bonus gift." Auntie Fan, surprised, didn't refuse this time. "There's a charm like this? I thought you had to burn it and put it in water to ward off illness." Tum Yu Nyu reassured her. "Don't worry, it just removes impurities like an air purifier. I've drunk plenty myself. I only have 2 wealth summoning charms left. I'll make more, and you can pick them up later." "All right, I won't disturb you anymore," Auntie Fan said happily, leaving with the purification charm. Tum Yu Nyu returned to her table, laid out the yellow paper and cinnabar, and drew 8 wealth summoning charms to make a total of 10. Then, she turned to page 4 of the miscellaneous notes and began practicing a new charm. This page described a charm called the guiding charm, said to connect the living and the dead, mainly used in rituals. It could also be used to deliver items to wandering spirits or underworld emissaries. Basically, it was like a supernatural delivery service. The guiding charm had very few strokes, 1 circle and 4 lines, resembling a simple drawing of a small bird. Few strokes didn't mean it was easy. The spell script for this charm was longer and more complex than the previous ones, taking Tum Yu Nyu half a day to read fluently in combination with the drawing. After finishing the guiding charm, she put down her brush and opened a food delivery app on her phone. Having practiced all morning, she decided to order lunch and take a break. Stretching, Tum Yu Nyu went to the courtyard to fetch a watering can, then watered the flowers and plants in the shop. The well water, purified with the purification charm, was not only fresh and sweet, but also kept the flowers and plants hydrated better than before. She took a picture with her camera, transferred it to her phone, and posted it on her social media. Within 5 minutes of posting, she received several likes and comments. Possibly due to her natural charm, she had always been well liked. From childhood to adulthood, she was always the most popular student in her class. Even primary school classmates she hadn't seen in years still occasionally kept in touch with her, not seeking help, but simply chatting casually. In the comments, many people praised the beautiful photo, and several college classmates asked where she was working now. Tum Yu Nyu replied to each comment, not mentioning Motwin town, only saying she had opened a flower shop on her own. After a while, the food arrived. She put down her phone, opened her iPad, and watched a movie while eating. When she checked the comments again after finishing her meal, she was relieved she hadn't checked her phone while eating. Otherwise, she might have choked. Among the more than 20 new comments, there was an unremarkable message from Dubitch. "You opened a flower shop. Where is it? My girlfriend's birthday is coming up and I want to order a bouquet." For Tum Nhu Nhu, receiving a comment like this from her old crush was a mix of emotions, deciding whether or not to sell to an old crush who had never reciprocated her feelings. After 3 seconds of consideration, she decided, of course, she should sell. Why let personal issues get in the way of business? They had no grudges, and it was just unrequited love that didn't work out. Refusing to interact because of that would be too petty. Moreover, from Du Bich's attitude, it seemed he was unaware of her past feelings. Her pretentious love letter probably never reached him, or he might have discarded it after reading only the beginning, not bothering with the signature at the end. Tum Nhu Nhu felt relieved that she had decisively chosen not to follow up for a response back then, avoiding current awkwardness. She picked up her phone, carefully typed out a response, telling everyone that her flower shop was not in the capital or Mado, and if they needed anything, they could order online. Not long after sending the message, she received private inquiries, all from former classmates she had good relations with. Du Bich also sent a message, expressing his desire to order a bouquet of roses and mentioning why he wanted to buy flowers from her. Seeing his familiar name, Tum Nhu Nhu nodded to herself, deciding to send a red envelope to Do Hao Dang after completing this business. Do Hao Dang was the president of the Botanical Association at Y University and also Du Bich's roommate in graduate school. Because of her interest, she joined the Botanical Association in her first year and stayed until she graduated, receiving numerous praises from Do Hao Dang for her care of plants. He even asked her for tips on plant care. It was through Do Hao Dang that she met Du Bich, leading to a series of unrequited actions, including that confession letter. She liked Du Bich at first sight, but her feelings faded quickly after learning he had a girlfriend. Shaking her head to dismiss these thoughts, Tum Nhu Nhu took several photos of the roses, fresh and sparkling with water droplets, easily good enough for a screensaver without any edits. Du Bich immediately placed an order for a bouquet, confirmed the delivery time, and paid, ending their interaction. Because of the social media post, she received several more online orders in the afternoon. Tum Nhu Nhu organized and packed the flowers and plants, then called SF Express to pick them up. With the deliveries sent out, she had free time again and continued practicing drawing charms. The more charms she drew, the less sluggish she felt. Now she could draw 6 wealth-summoning charms or purification charms in half an hour, averaging 5 minutes per charm, which was very efficient. The guiding charms she had just started learning took much longer, producing only 1 or 2 in half a day. At 6 p.m., Quinhua Duin closed for the day. Having been busy and focused all day, Tum Nhu Nhu only felt exhaustion after relaxing, her energy drained. She felt too tired to eat dinner, so she took a shower and went to bed. She slept from 6:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m., waking up because of thirst. Her throat was dry, and she struggled to swallow. There was no water in the bedroom. The kettle and cups were on the coffee table in the living room. Tum Nhu Nhu got up, went to the living room, and drank 3 glasses of water, instantly soothing her throat. As she was about to return to her room, there was a knock at the front door. Surprised, she listened carefully, confirming the sound came from her door. The time clearly showed 12:43 a.m. Someone knocking at this hour had to be important. But the person didn't seem urgent, knocking slowly 3 times, pausing, then knocking 3 times again, very rhythmically. She waited silently for 2 minutes, and the knocking continued, steady and precise every 10 seconds. She thought for a moment, picked up her phone and a small iron shovel, walked through the courtyard to the front shop, and peered out the window. Outside, she saw a tall, slender woman in a red dress standing by the door. Her hair was long and wavy, reaching her waist. From this angle, her face was not visible, but based on her figure and attire, she was undoubtedly a beautiful woman.